And hence today I've come to realize as I work with parents, they never ever ordered family systems therapy, which was the proper treatment if we were going to be doing any kind of therapy. And now that's one of the things I coach parents on. And it's difficult for a targeted parent to accept, like, what? You want me to go into therapy with this person who's being abusive and they're manipulative and I can't believe anything they're saying? But unless we get them into therapy, they're doing therapy on the wrong parties.
Hi, my name's Lawrence Joss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. Today we have Cindy Hirsch on the show from ISNAF. And ISNAF is a phenomenal nonprofit that is offering some incredible resources to parents, grandparents that are struggling with alienation and estrangement. They have an ebook that has got resources from all different authors from all over the country that is incredibly useful and a great way to access information. They have roundtables. They have a grief group, which is fantastic and a great part of the conversation. So stick around. This is a great interview. Yeah, a lot of rich stuff. And if you're new to the community, welcome to the community. We're glad to have you here. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. All our services are free. If you want to get hold of us or share any kind of information, there's a bunch of great stuff in the show notes, including our email address, familydisappeared@gmail.com. We also have a free 12-step program that we have 18, 19 meetings a week. Parental Alienation Anonymous. The link is in the chat too. Remember to like, share, comment. We'd love to hear from you. And that's my little shtick. Let's get into the show. I was about 8 years or so into my journey, and I had no idea the term of parental alienation or anything like that. And one day I was just Googling, and Amy Baker came up. And I ordered Amy Baker's book, and I got it and I read it, and it was like all these light bulbs and stuff were going off in my head. And I think a lot of people have that experience when they're listening to the podcast or some other resource that's available now. And I was just so excited not to feel completely crazy anymore, and that there was actually something happening here, and there was a framework for me to understand it. And there was so much relief in that, and there was this exuberance that I wanted to share it with everyone. And as I was reading Amy Baker's book, it says, don't overshare this information. You know what I mean? People can't necessarily take it in and process it. And that was a really valuable lesson for me to learn, because I did start sharing it with different people and wanting people to understand and know this is the path and stuff like that. And it wasn't useful. So that was like really an aha moment for me. And ISNAF is going to be offering a free seat at one of the grief training sessions. So be sure to listen to the show to get information how to participate in that raffle. And make sure to listen to the episode all the way through so you can understand how to participate in that raffle. And the grief group has been amazing and has had some amazing results. Let's jump into the conversation with Cindy. Hi, Cindy. It is so great to see you and have you on the show today. And Cindy is the CEO of ISNAF, which is a wonderful, wonderful organization for anyone out there struggling with parental alienation. And Cindy, can you let the folks know a little bit about you and a little bit about your organization, please?
Thank you for having us. We're grateful to be here. ISNAF was founded in 2008 by Karen LeBose. She was a therapist, and it began as a therapeutic group, meeting in people's living rooms. And people would just host meetings once a month, moving around. And then she began to do conferences. She was the first one to do conferences specialized on PA, and her first conference was in 2008. And then by 2010, she had a conference, and Amy Baker had just published her first book, Breaking the Ties That Bind, and was really not known in the community of PA at all. Karen had her as a keynote speaker, and hence that's where I entered. I had heard about it on the radio, about that conference. I was a standalone alienated parent since 2002. Didn't know another alienated parent. I had a background in sociology, and which included some psychology. So I understood some of the dynamics to not believe I was crazy, to realize that something was happening to my children. However, I didn't have the science of it. So I attended that conference where Amy Baker was the keynote speaker. There were multiple other huge professionals from the community that were presenting. Hence, that was my introduction to PA. And I volunteered immediately and said, what can I do to forward this organization? I know there's a need out there. I also met several other alienated parents. And for the first time, I met my family. I was once, entrenched and realized I am not alone. And so I immediately got involved, and it's been a journey ever since, and I've never stopped. And I've looked to expand the community.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I had no idea that this was just one parent starting an organization and there was one meeting a month. And now it's blossomed into such a wonderful offering for so many people. And that you folks were the pioneers. And it's interesting in 2010, like I started my journey in 2006, and there was nothing that you were able to find something and heard it on the radio. And I can't even imagine that first conference when you got there and you were finally able to breathe and say, wow, people, my people, I'm home. Like just can you just tell us a little bit more about like what that felt like?
Yes, and Karen has a therapeutic LMFT background. So one of the things she had us do, she had us in the main room, and then we had breakout sessions with some of the other professionals. And something she did at that conference that was so touching to me was she had a reunited parent come into the room and present, and she had the child there. It was an adult child in his early 20s. And she told that mother told her story, and I believe we have her story on our YouTube channel. And she told her story, and then and that mother had actually gone into mental health facility because she had gotten under so much duress, and then she was able to recover, and then she was able to strategize. She had a twin sister, with the sister and the family, to get the child to a family gathering, and there she was able to reunite with the child. And that child, at the end of her presentation, which everybody could relate to, she said, "And my son is here," and she had him stand up and introduced him, and then she let him talk, and she let us, have conversations with him. So that was absolutely, tear, jerking. And then something else she did is she had us, as we sat in the community, share with the people next to us, find out what they're dealing with, and people made friends and got contacts, and for the first time, we could all finish each other's sentences, and it was amazing. And I recognized in that moment that this was something I needed to be a contribution to, and minimally to help her, because I come also, my career is in business. I wanted to help her expand it. That was my goal. Is there, we need to get out there more, and we need to make a difference. And people need this work and need these communities. And so from there was Amy Baker. I bought her book. She signed it for me. And that was when she had her first book. Yeah. And her first conference, and she was the keynote. We have her on our YouTube channel presenting at that conference, by the way.
That is wonderful, and I love you sharing a little bit of tidbits about the conference and the therapeutic model, because our communities need more therapeutic-based conferences where people get to connect, share some stories, and they're not so cognitive and so academic. In my opinion, I think there's a huge need for that in the community. And can you just share with everyone that's listening what ISNAF stands for? And for anyone out there, ISNAF is ISNAF, and it's isnaf.org or isnaf.com.
ISNAF.info. Yeah, .com was taken, but the person who had that has since offered it to us. But since we have an identity and branding now, we haven't accepted it.
And what does ISNAF stand for?
Okay, and this was the name Karen LeBeaus gave it, and I had a very close friendship with her, and we had a lot of loyalty with each other, and so I told her she would always be our founder, and we would always keep the name ISNAF, even though it's long, and it stands for International Support Network for Alienated Families.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. And can you share a little bit about your story with alienation and what that looks like for you on an interpersonal level? And then we'll jump into talking about more about the organization and what the organization does.
Absolutely. So I got divorced in 2002, was the beginning of our separation. My children were 4 and 9 at the time. And I really thought that I was going to have a very amicable divorce. And I was a stay-at-home mom at that time. And I really thought, Dad, what do you want? I'll take care of the kids, whatever you need. And then at that time, we went to mediation, and he chose 60-40. I would get 60%. And I did the whole transition of going to his new place and helping the children get acclimated and welcoming them there with him, and did everything according to I was working with a therapist at the time. And then he brought a woman into his life that he eventually ended up marrying. And that's where everything really turned around. And then year by year, it got worse and worse. And she was adultifying the children, and she was doing a lot of, interrupting, interfering. And I began to see my children change before my eyes. At that time, I didn't recognize what I was dealing with. And I used to think, wow, must be the impact of the divorce. This is really impacting them. And then I kind of looked around and I didn't know what alienation was. So from 2002, and it really expedited in 2004 when he brought this woman into his life, who eventually became the stepmother. And then once that happened, it was a nightmare. And they went on a full out mission to take the children. And by the time they were 14, each of them, they were 5 years apart, each of them separately. The older one at about age 12, I began to notice severe changes in his personality, hostility towards me. And at this time, he was as big as I was, and started getting kind of wanting to get physical with me. And I was working with a therapist who talked to me about taking some courses on parenting at that time, dealing with children with destructive behavior. So I got some good tools at the time, but still didn't know it was alienation. And it wasn't until I began to see my younger child hitting around age 12, and that one of my friends said to me, "Do you know what parental alienation is?" And this was in 2007. And I said, "No." And she goes, "Why don't you Google it? Look it up. I think that's what you're dealing with. Another friend of mine is dealing with this, and I'm helping him in his divorce." So I Googled it. And at that time, Jane Major was the only one who came up in the Googling parental alienation. Remember, Amy Baker had not published her book. And Richard Gardner, I'm surprised he did not come up, but he was really much more of a clinician doing research. Wasn't really known at that time, I believe he passed away in like 2002, I believe. And so I looked at her work, I contacted her, and what she was doing at that time was basically expert witness and giving parenting classes. That was all she was doing. And so I did reach out to her. And my case wasn't ready for an expert witness. So, and I was working, I went back to work, and I didn't have the time to attend the parenting classes. And then she passed away, I believe in 2009, she passed away. And then at that time, then when I came to the conference, I began to see more. Then I began to understand who all the professionals were. Many of them were there, present and presenting. And then the community continued to grow. And then as part of the leadership of ISNAF, we continued to do conferences, and we would reach out, ask them to present at our conference. One of the conferences we had Dr. Michael Bone was our keynote speaker. We've always had Brian Ludmer. He's always extremely generous to come and present on the legal side of things, on the legal side. And Dr. Stephen Miller, Linda Gottlieb, Bill Burnett, multiple top professionals have been associated with ISNAF for years now. And then we actually created an advisory board, and we asked them all to be part of our advisory board. So ISNAF's board is compiled of alienated, and many of the parents who are alienated who were on our board are now reunited, which is amazing. And I always tell people, if you get on our board, you get to be reunited. It happens. I'm the long timer who hasn't yet, but I'm working on it. So anyhow, once I got into ISNAF, my journey continued. I spent 12 years in court. We settled on the property in 2006, and then the stepmother came into their lives around 2004, and it began to get worse and worse. Identified PA in 2007, came to help in 2010 to find ISNAF, and the legal journey became bitter. I had 5 attorneys. None of them understood parental alienation. I went through 18 therapists. The judges continued to try to find a solution, but kept ordering all the wrong things. And I know that today because now it's well known what the proper protocol is. But at that time, I just figured the courts know, the therapists know, and I had every confidence that they were the professionals and they understood the dynamic. Later in 2013, Dr. Miller identified at a conference we had, a symposium that he was came in on a closed door meeting with the top professionals, identified, no, the professionals don't know. And it wasn't until then that I realized that all those 12 years that I was in court, getting 18 different orders for different kinds of therapy, and some of those different therapies were reunification therapy, got ordered multiple times and never ever worked with each of my children, my oldest son first, and then later with my younger son, and individual therapy for them and for me. And then co-parenting therapy. Let's get the parenting, in alignment. None of it worked. Conjoint therapy. And hence today I've come to realize as I work with parents, they never ever ordered family systems therapy, which was the proper treatment if we were going to be doing any kind of therapy. And now that's one of the things I coach parents on. And it's difficult for a targeted parent to accept, like, what? You want me to go into therapy with this person who's being abusive and they're manipulative and I can't believe anything they're saying? But unless we get them into therapy, they're doing therapy on the wrong parties. The person
Wow.
causing the problem is not under the microscope, and they report back to the courts. So they just escape underneath the microscope. So that's why we tell parents it might be a difficult journey to put them in your therapy, but it's a necessary step to take. And now you can get the proper information from the clinician in front of the judge, and then the judge can take the proper, give the proper orders. And my ex violated every single court order that there is. He's still in violation of support orders. He owes me over $500,000. I no longer spend money on attorneys. I have a couple of attorneys I found who do collections, and they've taken the case on contingency. And so I just let them play with it. And I've kind of just written it off and said, if you get anything great, I get half. Otherwise, but yeah, so, and he, and my children are still estranged. They're now 27 and 32. The younger one got married. And so I heard about that through the grapevine a year ago, January. And it was, many of our parents have had children getting married, and I've coached many of them. And we've been there to support them through that. It's very painful, very disheartening. It's a milestone that you just can't imagine. It's like missing a graduation, not being invited or being uninvited. And it was very difficult. But, one of our tools we give is reframing. And I was able to reframe it. And in reframing it, I just said to myself, I guess it's better. I'm so grateful that I know he got married. And I found out who he married, and one of my friends found me pictures on the internet. But then I said, had I found out before the marriage, I would have gone nuts trying to be invited, want to be invited. Who is he marrying? How could I meet her? And I said, now I just get to know that. And now I have another party that I can reach out to with an attempt to reunite.
Thank you for that. That's a lot of different stuff, and an arc of parental alienation and struggling with the court system and stuff that so many parents go through. And I appreciate you sharing that, and where you are on your journey now. And I'd like to kind of like transition into like ISNAF and what you offer. And with ISNAF, like, what would you say are the core programs that you offer to parents? And if you can just let me know that, and then we can dig into each a little bit so people can understand a little bit more about the organization.
Okay, so we still do support meetings, not as proficiently as you do. We have them once a month, interactive meetings. We have once a month professional speak, so we get a panel of professionals we invite to present on a specific topic that we know our parents have an interest. We created a handbook back in 2015 to educate parents, and we didn't write it. We went through I personally went through about 50 books that I had read and just took the meat and potatoes out of it and created it almost as a Cliff Notes. It's 135 pages, but it's done in lists. So though everybody doesn't have to read all of Amy Baker's books and multiple other the professionals, we took everything you need to know and we put it in sections, and we put it in there so parents can immediately quickly see what are the 17 strategies, what are the 8 manifestations, what do you need to do in court, what are the strategies for court. And we actually reached out to some of the professionals to put that. So we have the handbook, and you can get that on our website. And then we do private parent coaching, where you can make an appointment and I will work with parents on whatever they're dealing with in their PA journey. And I've been through all of it, including false allegations, police departments, not getting access to the children. Then we created the PA grief and healing program, and we began to realize how many parents were coming to meetings in extreme grief and couldn't get past that. To be empowered inside of their lives and the journeys they had before them. So we created that with a certified grief specialist, and it's specialized to PA. We're very proud of that program because we've been able to take parents. We've had not a lot. I'm going to say probably 5 parents who came into that program suicidal and had made attempts, and their therapist said, try this program, and left our program after 7 weeks and said, I was in therapy for 4 years and never did I ever get on my feet and recognize that I now have power over this, that there's nothing wrong with me. And part of that problem is a lot of parents will internalize it. And then we created our roundtables. And the roundtables are a short 4-week program meeting once a week. You have homework, there's discussion, and all of our programs are done with 4 people. And I facilitate all of them. And then what we have with those, and we continue to create them as we see a need. And through the meetings, we, observe, what are our parents struggling with? What do they need to learn? And then we create a roundtable and get them specialized and get them that information. So we created a reunification strategies so parents can understand what is the recipe for that and what do we need to do. And then we get into action and we create strategies and we all work together on that. And people get into action during those 4 weeks. Come back, bring back what happened, what the situations are, and then we talk about how do we overcome those challenges, and remind everybody it's a marathon, not a sprint, and then change their expectations from there's that thing you do. It's like, no, prepare, you're climbing Mount Everest, and most of the time without oxygen, so it's a very tough journey. Yeah, then we have our boundaries roundtable. We have a communications negotiations roundtable because parents are out there talking to people and may never have been in those conversations before. So we teach them how to do that. Most recently, we created a gaslighting. Now parents, so they can understand why they're capable, how they have power over choosing to be gaslit or not. We have a self-care because that's critical. And now we recognize and really try to get parents to understand that's your priority. Over and above everything else is your well-being. And so you must get a regime of having some self-care. Then we also have Money Matters. We created that roundtable because so many parents were coming about, my child wants me to buy them this, $300 pair of tennis shoes, and they want me to buy them a car, and they want me to pay for their college, and they haven't spoken to me in years, and I don't know what do I do with that, or they want me to pay for the wedding, and they haven't spoken to me, and so we talk about Money Matters, and then we not only and that roundtable is really interesting because we evolved it to not just about what do you do with your children. That's one of the 4 weeks, but how do you plan for your future? How do you set boundaries? And we have parents who don't know, should I go into my retirement to continue in court? Should I sell my house to pay for the legal fees? And so we discuss that and we talk about that. And, how do you plan for your future and that it's necessary to do that for yourself? And the idea of that is when your children come back to you, who are you going to be? And we have had parents living in cars and children show up back in their lives and they have to scramble to find a place to live. And, how do I provide for my child a safe place for them to make that transition? So, and we continue to develop our programs. That's pretty much about what we have now.
So I'm just going to start with the ebook, which sounds like a wonderful resource that is breaking stuff down so parents can find stuff easily. And I know for me, with all the books out there and all the information, it just gets inundating. And at a point, like, you got to stop reading the books and stop getting involved in that because it can just become all consuming. And I love the idea that you have an ebook so people can find stuff easily, and the ebook will be on your website and all the stuff will be in the show notes. So if you're interested in that ebook and what it looks like and how to get to the website, we will put that information in there. And this ebook, does it evolve over time? Is it pretty static and you have one copy and then that's what goes out? Like, what happens with that?
We talked about doing a second edition, but there's nothing to add to it. We intended to add, we created a judge's handbook because then we did with because we're a nonprofit and we get the donations. So we created, let's educate the judges. Our children, that's one of the biggest challenges for our families. So we went back into that information, went to the top professionals out there and said, could you help us take the basis of this handbook and condense it down to a 30-page handbook that we can actually package and get into the hands of judges. So we created a physical copy and we strategically did everything, including the cover, the preface and everything on that book. And then we mailed it to judges. We have no idea whether they threw it in the trash, whether they read it, whether they use it. We have no idea how that came across, but we just said, let's get names of judges across the country and mail that. So we did evolve it into that. And in that, we did include the new, it was new at the time. And now we talked about doing a second edition for the regular handbook, but now it would be moot because we have in that judge's handbook the protocol would be to go into an intensive no contact, the protective order of 90 days for the aligned parent, and the other parent to be in an intensive reunification program. But now multiple states, including the state of California, have banned that from happening. So we are not going to put that in there because it's not a protocol. That there's 9 states now who have banned that, and multiple others who are attempting to do the same. So we just didn't put that back in there. But that was in our judge's handbook, and we since have stopped sending out the judge's handbook. We have parents who will send us a judge's name here and there, and we'll go ahead and mail the handbook out to that judge from ISNAF, so that parent's not ever associated with that they had anything to do with that.
Well, that's wonderful. It sounds like a wonderful addition to the original ebook, and thank you for that. And then you also mentioned that the grief group is most probably one of your foundational groups that's been incredibly successful. And you said that you actually have a professional that comes in to run the grief group. Did I understand that correctly?
No, we have. There was another parent who was on our board who was a grief specialist, and so her and I together wrote the grief program. She had a situation where the father in that case, and she had adult children, passed away, and then she had some issues with her own father, so she had to step out of it. But she was facilitating, and I was facilitating. So then I took over facilitating. So I facilitate every group I told you. I facilitate all of them.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And you said that you facilitate all the groups or most of the groups, and just on like an interpersonal level, like you get tired. Like it sounds like that could be taxing.
No, actually, I don't, and I do keep balance in my own personal life. I have an intention to get other people to take on some of that. And so there are a few other board members that I've been working very closely with, and they participate, and they've done the programs, and they're getting familiar with them. But I don't find it to be taxing. I actually find it to be rewarding. I'm retired from my career, and there's just that thing, a stage in life that you hit that you want to make a difference. And that's what ISNAF became for me is, I intend to make a difference in this world. And if it's one person at a time, then so be it, one at a time.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's interesting because this idea of service, like I talk about this a lot with folks, is my pain, it gets to be crazy sometimes, and sometimes it's manageable, and life is just moving along at a nice pace. But being of service to other people and getting outside of my own story and outside of myself is an incredible way to heal and to move forward in the world. And it sounds like service is an incredible part of your life and also a healing component to your life. Would you say that's correct? Wow. What a great conversation. A lot of wonderful takeaways, hearing just the history of how ISNAF started, and they were the first person to have a conference, and it was just one parent struggling. You know what I mean? And that's what we are. We're all just one person struggling, and then we become two, and then we become a community, and we don't feel so alone. And the system can only change with one parent at a time, becoming two parents at a time, becoming a bunch of feet on the ground that are actually creating change in the family, in the system, and systemically, we're going to have a chance. So thank you for listening to the show. And that was really great. And we're going to start to highlight different organizations that are doing some great work out there. And there's so many more organizations just besides our organization that you can go out and you can get some resources, and make sure wherever you're going that you're able to sit with it a little bit and discern if it's a useful place to be, or if it's a place that people are just continuously sharing the struggle, because just sharing the struggle is not a way through. It's a way to kind of be stuck in it. At least that's my experience. And as I work in some of these groups and go to meetings and work the 12 steps, like, my life changes because there is a way through, there is a trajectory, there is a framework. And so much of what Cindy's sharing about ISNAF is a way through, is a way to come home to yourself and to find yourself, so you can start to navigate so many of these complexities. So thank you for listening to the show. familydisappeared@gmail.com. If you have a comment, if you want to share something, if you know someone you think would be great to interview, or an organization to highlight, we'd love to hear from you. Please like, share, and here's the thing: if you want to be part of this competition to get that free grief group seat, comment on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever it is. ISNAF rocks. I love ISNAF, either one of those two, and we'll make sure that we enter you in the raffle. The raffle will run for just 2 weeks. So if you happen to be listening to the show a little bit later on, unfortunately that would have passed. But you'll still have all of ISNAF's information in the show notes in case you want to get more information. Thank you for coming out and playing today. In case no one's told you yet today, I love you. I love having community. I'm so grateful that I get to participate in this journey. And have a beautiful day.